Hello, I wasn't expecting to be recording a video today. It's a Friday and it's our changeover day on our holiday cottages. Old guests leave and new guests arrive, and I have my Mrs. Mophead on. I'm in cleaning mode, so please excuse my appearance. Something happened overnight which means that we have brought forward the release of Harriett Salt and Elizabeth Atkinson. Both of these samplers were due to release on June the 12th. This short video I am tagging onto the front of a video that I recorded a couple of days ago in readiness to release on the 12th of June, announcing the release of these two samplers. In the video that you're going to be watching, I talk about a giveaway that runs from June the 12th to July the 12th. But that giveaway will now run from today until July the 12th. So you do have some extra time to participate. I hope that you like these two new releases. If you carry on listening, you'll find out more about them. Hello, I hope everybody is well. I'm recording this video before I leave for the States, when I am going to teach workshops at Sassy Jack Stitchery and the Attic Needleworks. If all goes to plan, you should be seeing this video on June the 12th. And that's the day after I'm due to get back from the States. Now, June 12th has been ring marked on my calendar for quite some time. It's a special day for Hands Across the Sea samplers as we release two samplers on the 12th of June. And these samplers have been very anxiously waited for by many stitchers who saw me stitching them and sharing sneak peeks along the way. The first sampler we're going to look at is Harriett Salt 1866, and Harriett can be nothing other than a Bristol orphanage sampler, and these samplers are very endearing. Everybody's heart goes out to a little orphan girl, and when you think that these samplers were stitched to act as a reference when the vast majority of them went into domestic service, you know, you realise how important their needlework was. It could determine the position that they had in life. Now, we know a lot about Harriett Salt because the orphanage kept very good records, and they will share records with you if you pay a small fee for copies. We know that Harriett in the 1861 census was living a happy life. She had two parents alive and she had brothers and sisters. And then in the space of just over a month, she lost her father and her mother, and the whole family found themselves as orphans. The extensive family of uncles and aunts and grandparents, none of them could care for the children. The three sisters went into the orphanage, but the boys did not. And there is actually no record of the boys or people requesting a place for the boys in the orphanage. Now, we know that Harriett, when she left the orphanage, she was described as a good girl but not converted. So obviously Harriett had a lot of conviction in her own religion, and she was a thinker for herself. And I rather like that she wasn't converted into a religion different to her own. Harriett didn't go into a minor position as a domestic servant. She actually went as personal attendant to a Miss Cooper, and Miss Cooper's quite interesting actually because she ran a ladies' boarding school at Holly Mount, and Holly Mount is in Great Malvern, which is a very, very beautiful part of the countryside. And it's an area that I know very, very well because it's just outside the border of Wales, and I've spent many, many days, weekends in this area on short breaks and walking trips. And Hollymount is interesting because we know that Queen Victoria, when she was a princess, visited the house and stayed there with her mother. Now, the other thing that we know about Harriett, which makes her stand out from other Bristol orphans, is that she's probably stitched a second sampler. And this came to light through Claudia Kitzler, who is really the expert on Bristol orphanage samplers, and it's the power of the internet and how we all connect. Claudia saw me post that I had a new Bristol orphanage sampler, and we got talking, and when Claudia saw the name Harriett Salt, she became quite excited, and Claudia has actually written something for me to include in Harriett's booklet, and I'll read that to you. Every girl who lived at George Muller's orphanages between the ages of 12 to 15 was required to stitch a red thread sampler. These intricate samplers were their resume with a needle. There were hundreds of these samplers stitched. Not all have survived, but we have enough of those that did survive to know the alphabets, motifs and other characteristics that define a red Bristol sampler. Harriett's sampler presented in this leaflet was the sampler that she had to stitch. Unique also to the Bristol orphanage homes and much less familiar are the multicoloured samplers stitched there. These samplers are far fewer in number than the redwork samplers. In the process of researching the 1866 red Harriett sampler, it was discovered that a multicoloured sampler was sold at auction in 2015 that was stitched by a Harriett Salt. There was only one Harriett Salt listed in the orphan records from 1866 to 1868. From the auction pictures, the name and information on this sampler reads Harriett Salt, North Wing, New Orphan House, Ashley Downs, Bristol, 1868. If this is Harriett's second sampler, then we now know a little bit more about the purpose of the rare multicoloured orphan samplers and why there are so few of them seen today. Harriett Salt's skill with a needle has opened the door to the idea that the multicoloured Bristol samplers could be second samplers. Most of the Bristol multicoloured samplers are not signed or dated, which makes sense if the girls were working them for their own pleasure. These samplers also share similar elements just as the redwork pieces do. Here are several reasons why only certain girls would have been offered the chance to stitch a second sampler. Firstly, the multicoloured samplers were worked in expensive silk thread. A beginner would not have been allowed to stitch with silk. Secondly, the girl would have had to have been at the orphanage long enough to complete her redwork sampler first and then begin another sampler. Thirdly, she would have purposed to set aside dedicated stitching time apart from her daily duties at the orphanage, which would include taking care of the younger children, laundry and housekeeping. Therefore, the girl would have enjoyed working with her needle and thread and wanted to stitch a second sampler. Harriett's 1868 sampler is the earliest dated and signed multicoloured Bristol sampler that has surfaced so far. Harriett Salt, because of the samplers she stitched, has provided us with an unexpected insight into sampler history. It's good to share knowledge, and between me posting about this sampler and Claudia's research, we have managed to discover something that's very, very interesting and adds to our knowledge of the Bristol Orphanage's samplers. Now, let's talk a little bit about the reproduction. I had great fun stitching this sampler. From the moment I saw this sampler at auction, I just had to have her. I really, really wanted to have her, and it was a question of breaking out the piggy bank and being very nice to my husband, and I couldn't wait for her to arrive. And literally the day she arrived, I started to work on her, and I didn't sit down and chart her all. I sat down, charted for as many hours as I could, and then I picked up my needle and I started stitching, and I literally was charting her and stitching her. And then that was just before Christmas of last year. And then I was off to the States, so I had to stop stitching her and finish charting her so that I had her to take with me. And she travelled with me. I stitched on her as I was flying across the Atlantic, and I stitched on her at the Attic Needlework Sampler Symposium. And when I look at this sampler, I remember a lovely afternoon spent stitching with Jean Lee of the Attic, Kathy Ray of Needle in a Haystack, and Janice Spencer from Traditional Stitches, whilst we were listening to Jackie du Plessis talk and teach a class. So this sampler has very happy memories. She travelled with me from Arizona onto a cruise ship, and I actually finished her on the cruise. And I wasn't expecting to finish her because she's a lot of stitching, but I couldn't put her down, and I finished her halfway through the cruise, and then I was twiddling my thumbs for the rest of the time. The Bristol Orphanage's samplers, they're very therapeutic to stitch, and I think that they give you a wonderful sense of achievement. All these little borders, you know, you can sit down so easily and say, right, I'm going to stitch this tonight, and it's very, very achievable. And for me, I love jigsaw puzzles, I love crosswords, I love Sudoku, I love anagrams, and I love stitching these samplers because each of these little sections of borders present a mental challenge of the stitch path you're going to take. And I really enjoy sitting down before I start a particular border and think, how am I going to stitch this in the most sort of logical way. They're great, great fun. Now, Harriet is a big girl. Her stitch count is 413 413 by 414 414. So she is square, and it goes to show that this linen is not even weave because the sampler is not square in the frame, even though it was described as even weave. Now, I stitched this sampler with the Overa Soie 103, and I used 6 spools on 56 count. There are 48,354 cross stitches in this sampler, and there is one little alphabet that's done in 4-sided stitch. Great fun, very, very rewarding, and I really hope that you enjoy stitching her. Her booklet is 36 pages, and it comes with some history about Harriett and about George Mueller. Now, because the graph was so big, I couldn't write lots of pages, so you only have 2 pages and a back page of information, but it is jam-packed with information. The chart is very, very clear and very kind on the eyes. It's printed in quite a large format. We have the usual centrefold spread so that you can see the sampler in great detail as you're stitching her. And because Harriett didn't have a thread legend as such, so the bookmarks we normally put a thread legend on. I thought, what can I do? Because I can't just have a bookmark with one colour on. And I came up with a very different idea. So you have a bookmark and you have a nice little poem on the back to reflect on. And on the front, rather than a thread legend, you have a little card to fill out with your details. It tells you what the sampler is, and then you can add who it was stitched by, your address, when you started, when you finished, the linen you used, the type of thread you used, the stitch count of the project, the stitches used, and you can record if there was any modifications. And when you finish stitching Harriett and you have her framed, you can attach this to the back of the frame, and there is a little record for future generations to discover when they turn the sampler over. And I actually think this is a really, really good idea. And I was thinking that maybe for future reproductions, that what I would do on the bookmark is to have the thread legend on one side, but on the back of the thread legend to have this little form, so that it would serve both purposes. And then I was thinking, if you did that, would you really want to have a tassel? Because obviously the tassel would be hanging loose on the back of the frame. So I've done this one without a tassel and without a punch in there, and I would very much like your feedback to whether you prefer a bookmark with a tassel or a bookmark without a tassel and therefore without a hole punched in it, because both of them you will be able to attach to the back of your frame sampler afterwards. So please leave some comments and we will make a decision about future releases, but all future releases will have this form on the back of the thread legend. Enough about, before I finish with Harriett, she uses 6 spools of 103 on 56 count, and if you're going to stitch her on say 40 or 36 count, which is the average size that most stitchers work on, you will need 16 skeins of d'Alger or DMC. So the colours red that I used was 681 in the 103, and 2924 is the conversion for the d'Alger, and for DMC it is 321. It's a very beautiful shade of red. The original Harriett was stitched on linen that today measures 80 count. It is exquisite, and I don't know if she stitched originally on 80 count or whether maybe her sampler was washed and shrunk. The original is at Sassy Jack Stitchery, and you will find the model of Harriett Salt at Sassy Jack Stitchery as well, so that the model and the original are together. And Claudia Kissler is at Sassy Jack's in October, presenting a workshop and lecture on Bristol Orphanage's samplers. Now, I've heard Claudia speak at the Bristol Orphanage Museum in Bristol, and she knows so much and is so enthusiastic about these samplers that I've actually booked to fly over to attend that workshop, and it will be lovely for the people who are attending because they will get to see Harriett, the model, and Harriett, the original, side by side. Now let's have a look at the next release that we've got, and that is the sweet, and she is sweet, Elizabeth Atkinson. Now Elizabeth is a sampler that many of you would have seen me stitch when I was back in the States for Nashville. This sampler was there was not one stitch put in at home. I started her on the 6-hour car journey to London, and I stitched on her as I flew across the Atlantic. I have stitched on her in hotel lobbies, in hotel bedrooms. I stitched her on a cruise. So she has travelled a lot of miles. I have stitched her on a beach. I stitched her on the deck of a ship, and I chose this little sampler specifically as a travel project. Her colours are absolutely exquisite, and she's probably not showing at her best today. It's such a grey, miserable day here. Let me just get up and see if you can see her a little bit better. The colour palette is really, really pretty on this sampler. Now, I chose her because of her size and the fact I could work her very easily in a hoop. But why she makes a good travel project or summer lightweight easy project is her border is a very easy border to stitch out. Doesn't require a lot of concentration. Her alphabet is a very simple alphabet to stitch out. These straight lines give you great reference points. And the motifs are very sweet, but they're very simple ones to stitch out. So I could stitch without giving this project 100% concentration. And probably the most the biggest motif is this beautiful Tudor roses in a urn. And what I did with this one, as many of you will see who follow my floss tubes, I stitched out the outline in the piece of my cabin, and then I filled her in when I was out socialising on the cruise ship. I stitched her in 103, but the chart comes with a conversion for the d'Alger from Vera Soir and the DMC. She uses 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 15 different colours, and her stitch count is 281 by 220, and I stitched this sampler on 46 count straw from Weeks, and this is over dyed on Swigart linen. It's a beautiful colour, very, very pleased with this one. And I had great fun writing the booklet on this one. I had so much fun, I got carried away. And you have lots and lots of information within this booklet. You have the centrefold spread, and this is actually capturing the colour of the sampler far better than the sampler looks in this dull, dreary day. The stitches used in this sampler are cross stitch over 1 and 2 threads and Algerian eyelet. The over 1 is the little alphabet and the verse, and the Algerian eyelets are just this little row. I loved the funkiness of this sampler. I loved the stripiness of this little motif. I love the splashes of burnt orange in the sampler, and I love the blue stag. I thought that was so sweet. And the windmill. And the little Adam and Eve seed. And just in case we didn't know it was Adam and Eve, Elizabeth added A and E, which again is terribly charming. Now, this sampler has a really exciting giveaway. We all like a little bit of fun, and we like giving back to our patrons. So with Elizabeth, there is a giveaway running from the 12th of June, which should be today, the release date of the video, to the 12th of July. And the question that you have to answer is to name the 7 females that played in the original Game of Thrones. Now, don't jump in and think TV series, because you will come up with the wrong answer. You need to buy the booklet. This giveaway is available for people who purchase Elizabeth Atkinson. The answer is inside the booklet, and all you need to do is to email the hats competition email address, which is showing below this video, and give me the name of the 7 females that played in the original Game of Thrones. All the correct answers will be entered into a draw to win 5 £50 vouchers to spend on the Hands Across the Sea website. I'm sure you'll agree that is a super giveaway, and you know, £50 will buy you easily 2 booklets and cover the postage cost as well. So I hope that you will have fun reading through the booklet. There's a fabulous story that comes with the booklet, and good luck in the giveaway. Is there anything else I wanted to add? Oh, the model for Elizabeth Atkinson could be seen at the Attic Needleworks, and I hope that if you're in the area that you will call in to see her. She's really, really beautiful in real life. I just wish this light was better today so that you could see her, because she is very, very much about her colours, and these colours, they glow in real life under proper light. So I hope that you will enjoy the 2 new releases. We certainly had great fun making these available for you, and whoops, there they are. Now all you need to do is to stitch them so that they hang on your sampler walls as well. Until the next time, bye-zy bye.